in formal ways.
All right, Amy Jacobson.
Oh, did you have a...
Oh, one second one. Sorry about that.
I did have another one.
Sorry.
State Rep Marty Moylan wants to make it a hate crime to attack police officers, increasing the penalty for such acts. Supporters cite what happened to CPD officers during last year's Grant Park protest as why they should do this. Mayor, should it be a hate crime to attack a cop?
Here's what I think, and I haven't read the legislation, so I don't want to opine about it specifically. It goes without saying that our police officers have a very difficult job. And this is probably one of the most difficult times to be the police, maybe in the history of our city and perhaps even the country. It's very difficult. I will forever be haunted by what happened at the Columbus statue last year. And so will the individuals, police officers who were hurt. We just attended a recognition ceremony where the sergeant who was injured by a projectile in his eye and otherwise got injured that day was recognized for his heroics over the course of that day. But anybody who watches that video showing these people, and I think most of them probably weren't from the city of Chicago, coming southbound on Columbus Avenue and going into that clearing and then using, dressing all in black, putting on goggles, passing out frozen water bottles, fireworks and other projectiles to be able to pelt the police with. Anybody who recognizes that we've got a problem and that a problem has to be fixed. And even stepping aside from that, we're seeing historic numbers in 2020 and again in 2021 where police officers are getting shot at an alarming rate. No one of goodwill thinks that that is a tolerable set of circumstances, and we've got to make sure that we're sending a very clear message that we will hold people accountable. They need to be prosecuted, and if they're successfully prosecuted, they need to get severe penalties so that can act as a deterrent. It's really hard to be the police, and it is not fair to paint with a broad brush the misconduct that we've seen of some against the entire 12,000 plus police department. Most people that are on the job come on the job for the right reason. They stay on the job for the right reasons. We are not going to be able to have the kind of police force that we need unless we send a message that they will be protected in helping protect us. And that's not nearly enough of what's happening now. I've shown that video of what happened at Columbus, the Columbus statue, to the Secretary of Homeland Security when he came to visit. The first thing I did was cue that up for him to see, because we need to know who is responsible for this. We still don't know, and we need to make sure that never happens again. But for those officers and their families, particularly the ones that have been injured, what do we say to them? We've got to do a better job of sending, I think, a very clear message that criminal conduct is not going to be tolerated in the city of Chicago, and police officers should be able to do their job without worrying about physical injury to themselves.
All right. Lastly, Amy Jacobs.
Hi. So some of the people that were at the Columbus Day statue were also in Kenosha the night of the rioting for Kyle Rittenhouse. A lot of people read your tweet on Friday night, the statement that you released. Do you really think that his acquittal on all charges is a warning shot that vigilante justice is now allowed? And did you watch the videos that were presented in the courtroom?
I've seen a number of the videos in connection with that case. Look, here's what I think. Obviously, a jury heard evidence and rendered a verdict. I also watched what the judge did in shaping the evidence that was getting presented to that jury. I'm an old trial lawyer, right, and I know when I see a judge putting their thumb on the scale for a particular result. I was not at all surprised.
What in particular did he do?
Well, the excluding of evidence, not allowing the deceased to be called victims, not letting certain charges go to the jury. When a jury, in my experience, tries to do the best they can, and particularly in a trial like this, every single one of those jurors knew this is a very big deal. And I think that they took their responsibility very seriously, given the fact that they took almost 3 days to deliberate. But they're looking for cues, not just from the prosecutor and the defense attorney, they look for cues from the judge. And that's why it's so important when you are a trial judge in any case, but particularly something as sensitive as this, you got to call balls and strikes. You got to be very even-handed. And you can't afford to send messages, whether intentionally or otherwise, to the jury that you have a particular point of view of how the evidence should come out. I mean, for example, I've never seen in 30-plus trials that I did as a prosecutor and several more as a defense attorney, I never saw a circumstance where the defendant got to pull names out of a hat of who the jurors were going to be that were deciding his fate. I've never seen anything like that before. So I could go on, but you get the point. The judge, in my view, put his thumb on the scale. And that's not the way justice in the United States ever should happen. And what I worry about, and you know, you've watched the media that's happened since Friday. You know, these right-wing, frankly, unhinged members of Congress offering an internship to Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, what is that? A lot of other groups that, frankly, in my view, are anti-American, anti-democracy, using this as a rallying cry. Yeah, I'm very concerned about what that verdict does. Now, again, you've got to respect the jury's decision. They were called upon to call balls and strikes. You know, I think if I'd seen that evidence, I may have come out with a different result. But let's just back up from this. Why on earth did that child, and that's what he was, child, have an AR-15 or whatever his rifle was, leave his home in Antioch and think that he had the right to go up to another state to supposedly protect the city? That makes no sense to me. And if it's a free-for-all, and everybody can simply take matters into their own hands, we're going to devolve into chaos. And that's what I'm concerned about. He had no business being there. None. And neither did anybody else other than bona fide law enforcement or property owners in Kenosha. He had no business being there.
Okay, can I ask the doctor one question? And